In this episode, we start by making a potentially intimidating idea feel practical. The PCI Customized Approach, which is a way to meet security objectives without following a single fixed recipe for every control. Beginners often feel safer when there is one exact checklist to follow, because checklists feel clear and final. The customized approach exists because environments differ, threats differ, and sometimes a well-designed alternative can meet the same intent more effectively than a one-size-fits-all method. The catch is that using a customized path requires stronger thinking and stronger evidence. Because you are not just saying we did the control, you are saying our approach achieves the control objective. And here is how we know. That is why the word decisively matters. You should know when the customized approach is appropriate, what it demands from you, and how to avoid the common mistakes that make it fail during assessment. When you can explain it clearly, you show that you understand PCI as a set of security outcomes, not just a list of tasks. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A strong foundation is understanding the difference between following a defined method and meeting an objective, because that distinction is the heart of customization. A defined method, sometimes called the default or standard approach, tells you a specific way to implement a control, such as doing a particular type of configuration or maintaining a particular type of process. An objective describes the security outcome the control is meant to produce, such as preventing unauthorized access, detecting malicious activity, or protecting sensitive data. The customized approach focuses on proving the outcome, even if the method differs from what is written as the default. That means you are responsible for showing that your method addresses the same risks and achieves the same protection level. Beginners sometimes think customization means doing less, but in practice it often means doing more thinking and more validation. When you understand that, you stop seeing customization as an escape hatch and start seeing it as a disciplined engineering choice. To apply the customized approach correctly, you need to understand why PCI allows it and what problem it is trying to solve. Payment environments can vary widely, from small online stores using hosted payment pages to large enterprises with complex networks and multiple service providers. A rigid method can sometimes be mismatched to a particular environment, either by being too narrow to address real threats or by being too burdensome without improving security. The customized approach allows an organization to design controls that fit the environment while still meeting the intent of the requirement. However, PCI does not want creative security stories. It wants demonstrable security outcomes. This is why customized controls must be grounded in risk reasoning and verified by testing and evidence, not just by confidence. The purpose is flexibility with accountability, not flexibility with excuses. A practical beginner question is when you should consider using the customized approach, because not every situation calls for it. You might consider customization when the default method does not fit the architecture, when the environment uses a different but robust security model, or when there is an innovative control that provides equivalent or stronger protection. You might also consider it when using managed services or modern platforms that achieve control objectives in a different way than older environments. What you should not do is choose customization because it feels easier, because easier approaches usually fail when you have to prove effectiveness. A decisive choice means you evaluate the trade-off. The default method may be simpler to justify, while a customized method may fit better but requires stronger evidence. For exam thinking, the best mindset is that customization is a deliberate strategy that must be justified and validated, not a casual preference. Once you decide to customize, the next critical step is being able to state the control objective in plain language, because your entire justification depends on that objective. If you cannot explain what the requirement is trying to accomplish, you cannot demonstrate that your alternative accomplishes it. For example, if the objective is to restrict network access to the cardholder data environment, CDE, your alternative must show that access is restricted in a way that prevents unauthorized connections and limits attack movement. If the objective is to ensure only authorized users can access systems, your alternative must show strong identity controls, enforcement, and monitoring. Beginners sometimes rush into describing the alternative control without first anchoring on the objective, and that leads to vague explanations that do not map to the requirement's intent. A correct customized approach starts with clarity about the goal, then a clear explanation of how the design achieves that goal. This is where decisiveness comes from, because you are not guessing what the control is about. You are stating it plainly. A core requirement of customization is evidence, and beginners should treat evidence as a story that can be checked, not as a pile of documents. Evidence should show what the control is, where it applies, how it is operated, and how it is tested to confirm it works. It also must show that the control continues to work as the environment changes, which means it includes not just a snapshot, but a process. In a customized approach, evidence often needs to be stronger because the assessor cannot rely on familiar default patterns. That means you should expect to explain your logic, your assumptions, your threat considerations, and how your testing supports your claims. If your evidence is weak, the customized approach becomes vulnerable to doubt, even if the control is actually strong. The lesson for beginners is that customized security is not just building something. It is building something and being able to prove it. Another important idea is that customized controls should be designed with measurable outcomes, because measurability is what makes proof possible. If you say your approach limits access, you should be able to show how access is limited and how you confirm that limitation remains true. If you say your approach detects attacks, you should be able to show what signals indicate detection and how you validate those signals are reliable. This does not require deep technical configuration detail. It requires clarity about what success looks like and how you know you achieved it. Beginners sometimes describe controls using vague words like secure, protected, or robust, but those words do not provide a testable claim. A decisive customized approach turns vague claims into specific outcomes, then ties those outcomes to verification. When you train yourself to speak in outcomes and verification, you align naturally with what PCI expects. A common pitfall is customizing in a way that accidentally reduces security coverage, usually because the alternative addresses only part of the requirement's intent. For example, an alternative might block certain traffic but fail to address administrative access pathways, or it might rely on monitoring without ensuring prevention where prevention is required. Another pitfall is assuming that a modern platform's built-in features automatically meet PCI objectives without understanding how those features are configured and operated. A third pitfall is failing to consider how the control behaves during exceptions, such as outages, failover, or emergency access, where the environment can temporarily become less secure. These pitfalls happen because customization invites creativity, and creativity can miss edges if it is not disciplined. A correct approach anticipates these risks by explicitly addressing the full intent, including edge cases, and by validating behavior under realistic conditions. For exam readiness, it helps to remember that partial equivalence is not enough. The alternative must meet the objective comprehensively. Customized approaches also interact with scope, which is why you need to think about where the control applies and what systems it affects. If the control is meant to protect the CDE, you must show that it covers all relevant components, including connected to and could impact systems where appropriate. If the control is implemented in a shared responsibility environment with a service provider, you must show who operates which parts and how you verify their operation. Beginners sometimes propose a customized control that is strong in one segment but does not cover an integration or a boundary where data crosses. That creates a gap that can undermine both compliance and security. A decisive application includes a clear statement of the boundary and the coverage, and it connects back to the data flow map and the segmentation story. When you can trace the control's coverage across the environment, you are less likely to miss a critical path. It is also useful to understand how assessors evaluate customized approaches, because assessment expectations shape what counts as adequate proof. Assessors want to see that the control objective is understood, that the alternative is clearly described, that the risks are considered, and that testing demonstrates effectiveness. They also want to see that the control is not a one-time setup, but is maintained through procedures, monitoring, and change management. If the customized approach relies heavily on a process, they will want to see that the process is followed consistently and that exceptions are handled safely. Beginners sometimes think assessment is about persuading someone verbally, but assessors rely on evidence that can stand on its own. When you design and document a customized approach with assessment in mind, you naturally make it clearer, more testable, and more defensible. This is why decisiveness matters. You choose a path you can prove, not a path you hope will be accepted. Finally, you should be able to explain when it may be smarter to use the default approach, even if customization is allowed, because good judgment includes knowing when to keep things simple. If the default method fits the environment and can be implemented cleanly, it may reduce risk by reducing complexity and by making assessment more straightforward. Customization can be powerful, but it can also introduce uncertainty if evidence is incomplete or if the design is too complex to validate reliably. A decisive learner does not customize just to customize. They choose the approach that produces the strongest security outcome with the clearest evidence. In many cases, that means using defaults for common controls and reserving customization for the areas where it truly provides better alignment or stronger protection. When you can articulate this trade-off, you show mature understanding rather than a one-sided preference. By the end of this lesson, the key takeaway is that the PCI Customized Approach is a disciplined method for achieving security objectives with flexibility, and it succeeds only when you can clearly explain intent, design, coverage, and proof. You start by stating the control objective in plain language, then describe how your alternative meets that objective across the relevant scope, including boundaries and exceptions. You focus on measurable outcomes and strong evidence, because assessors and real security both depend on verification, not confidence. You also choose customization only when it is justified and provable, and you are willing to use the default approach when it produces clearer, simpler compliance with strong security. When you apply the customized approach correctly and decisively, you show that you understand PCI as outcome-based security, and you build controls that can stand up to both assessment scrutiny and real-world threats.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.